as we're looking back on this past year, and we will be doing the Sabbath too, looking back on
Yes. Oh, I forgot to
this.
say that.
Okay, so we're sharing about highlights from 2024, things that God's done for us. And one of the themes for me that was stuck out in my head this year that I was hearing from God is seasons. And you just mentioned that briefly a little bit ago, but I'm just thankful for the seasons that God brings us through, and even just just amazed at how He's shown His nature of faithfulness and steadfastness through His gift of seasons, and how His grace has become evident in the seasonal cycle. Yeah. And even just naturally speaking, if at the end of fall, when you see, I don't know if you're anything like me, when you see the very first snowfall, you still every year get giddy about it, and just filled with joy and excitement for what that season brings. And then, so that's the beginning of that season for us, excitement. And then nearing the middle or the end of winter, we're all ready. We're done over it, as they say. We're over it. Yes. So ready for the new season to come. We're ready. We're already expectant for the new, for springtime. And so the beginning of the season brings excitement, it's joy, and then we look ahead with anticipation because we've been through the past season, and then once we're in the new season, then we can look back at the one we were in previously with thankfulness and understanding of what God brought us through. And it's our nature, our human nature, that we really can't stay in the same place for so long before we start longing for something else or something new, something fresh. And we seek refreshment. And God's nature is, through all of this, is unchanging and immovable. He's faithful, ever present in all of those seasons with us, and He's providing along the way. So, and God understands this trait that we have for longing for new things. He made us. We're from His nature, so He knows about that trait about us. And in His promises, in many of His promises in His Word, there are images and figurative expressions about nature and our desires, and combining those pictures. Psalm 23 is a very famous one. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside still waters. He restores my soul. So He's the restorer of our soul. And another passage I found, this is in Song of Solomon 2:11 through 13. It says, "For lo, the winter is past. The rain is over and gone. The flowers appear on the earth. The time of singing of the birds is come. The voice of the turtle is heard in our land. The fig tree putteth forth her green figs. The vines with tender grape give a good smell. Arise, my love, my fair one, and come away." And so this is a call. For us, when we read this is a call to a renewed love, an invitation to enjoy that freshness that comes when you're feeling that feeling of being in love and having that for the first time. Everything's so fresh. And this is what God's love offers to us every time that we need that refreshment. Every time we're seeking that, His love offers that newness and that just the color to our life when we're seeking that, when we're in a dark place. And then Isaiah 40, verse 31 says, "But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up wings as eagles, run and not be weary, walk and not faint." So here He is again, lifting us up. He sees when we're weary, and He is renewing our strength. So there's another kind of refreshment. And if you just thinking about nature and God's, the way that He has, the amazing things He's done with nature in the Bible and in the world today. The story of Noah, of course, comes to mind. And in Genesis chapter 8, this is after the flooding had stopped, the rain had stopped, and Noah is waiting for the land to become dry so they can come off the boat and start their life over. So this is Genesis 8, 6 through 12, I'm sorry. And it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. He sent forth a raven which went forth to and fro until the waters were dried up from off the earth. Also he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters were abated off from the face of the ground. But the dove found no rest for the sole of her foot, and she returned unto him into the ark, for the waters were on the face of the whole earth. Then he put forth his hand and took her hand and pulled her into him into the ark. And he stayed yet another 7 days, and again sent forth the dove out of the ark. The dove came into him in the evening, and lo, her mouth was an olive leaf plucked off. So Noah knew that the waters were abated from off the earth. He stayed yet another 7 days, sent forth the dove, which returned not again to him any more. And I, obviously have heard this story so many times, but just that specific part had never really dwelt on much before. And we've seen this image of the dove with the olive branch in its mouth. We've seen this so many times, but I didn't take much time to think about that visual before. And the reality of the scenario that they were in at the time, this was the first time in almost 200 days that a bird was able to perch on top of a tree. So it's a sign, it was a sign for them of hope and sign of new life, new beginning, and also proof of God's rule over nature. When we look at this story, if we feel or have felt surrounded by floodwaters or that we seem to be riding on, it would only take for us a small branch for us to know that there's a sign of hope, there's a sign of life out there, and that would propel us to push through in that waiting period, which would Noah, he said, he knew there was a branch, but he waited 7 more days till there was ground to be seen. So, but it will take a small little branch just for us to know there's hope. This is worth waiting for. So that reminded me too of, I think it was my dad who did a sermon and shared an image where you could see the light at the end of a tunnel. Is that you? Yeah. Okay. And you could see the light at the end of the tunnel, but there was still a long way to go on the path to the light. So when we see that light at the end of the tunnel, we still might have a ways to go. We don't know how far we have yet to go before we reach the end, or whatever the end is for us, but we know that there is an end. So in that story of Noah and the ark too, it was one I've struggled with for a long time, just the thought, and it's a children's story, but to me it's just such a heavy story to think of God destroying the whole earth, And so as a kid and teenager and adult still was wrestling with it. And I think, for me what helps is just if you reread those passages leading up to that time in Genesis, understanding God's nature and, not, if there's something that's hard for me to grasp, not running away from it or skipping over that passage, but just delving deeper into it, being diligent in study about it and, humbling myself before the Lord and give those places extra attention. That is what builds my faith. When there's any passage that we struggle with, that's what builds our faith, is to go deeper, and so that we can remain in a place of just confidence of God and His greatness. And so some of the facts about this story of Noah and the ark is that God knows the intents of the hearts of all people, and that's what He said in Genesis 6:5, is that every intention of the thoughts of man's heart was only evil continually. And God knew that. God understood their hearts. He saw the things, everything. And so it's another truth in this scenario that God is merciful, because there is a way in his sovereignty that he could see the future where every person on earth was affected by this evil continuing and the hearts of these evil people. And he saw what that led to, this perpetual evil. So God was intervening in a merciful way, if you can even believe that. And I do believe that. And God was working, another truth is God was working to restore goodness. Good, and I mean, what a blessing for us today that we can be a part of experiencing that goodness on the earth. And as Isaiah referenced too, God made a covenant with Noah in that moment that was remembered for years and years and years, and the covenant was that he would never destroy the earth in that way again. And so that is a promise that we can still hold on to. So just, again, evidence of God's faithfulness in each season. And after Noah built his altar to the Lord, after the ground was dry, he burnt his offering, and the Lord said it was a sweet smell. And then the Lord makes the covenant that the earth won't be destroyed this way again. And then if you go down to, right after that, in verse 22, I'm sorry, Jacob, as long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease. And wow. So that's, the promise here is we are never going to be stuck in one season forever as long as we're here. Things will always continue to move forward. God will always be the one orchestrating it. He's always the one behind the scenes. He will always be behind it, which means he will be always alongside us through each season. So that's the promise that I take from that. Robert has been doing a series recently about abiding in the vine. And that is, I haven't heard all of it, but it's been exciting to hear that. And I was reminded of years ago when I was a freshman in college. I was in a geography class, and the professor was huge into viticulture, winemaking. This was like, I think 50% of the class was just learning about that. But it was really interesting, really, and he said that he'd been to Italy and everywhere, and he said that the best vineyards were up in Michigan, in like Traverse City area. So anyways, I learned a lot, and I remember learning one thing about ice wine and how that's made with the grapes. I couldn't find any materials, but I couldn't remember exactly the process that I had learned extensively, but I was looking it up again. And ice wine is made from grapes that are harvested during winter. And so it's taken from, grapes that are left on the vine to freeze, and then, but before they're left on the vine to freeze, they are netted so that they can be protected from any animals that might devour them. So they're protected before they're put out to freeze. To freeze. So, and then when they're harvested, they're pressed while they're still frozen, and it brings out this really sweet, like nectar-like wine. So I was loving this picture when we think about our own winters, and our own seasons, and we can, if there's a time that you've ever felt, abandoned or maybe useless for a season, and you see everybody doing these big things and living out their purpose, and maybe you feel stuck for a time. And what if you feel this way? And hoping this metaphor is working for you guys too, but maybe it's your season to stay on the vine a little bit longer. So you'll be protected while you're there. God will cover you. God's watching you. And it's going to be cold. It's going to be dark. It's going to be lonely sometimes, difficult, but God wants to produce something sweet.
Yeah, that's true. Come on.
And he wants the best to come out of us, and he wants others to taste and see his goodness and his glory, and that's what it's for, is his glory. I mean, you have a similar metaphor too in the word with the refiner's fire. In 1 Peter 1:7 says, so that the tested genuineness of your faith, more precious than gold that perishes through it, is tested by fire, may be found to result in praise and glory and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ. So again, the purpose of that pressing is for the praise and glory of the revelation of Jesus Christ, for people to know about Jesus Christ. So the goal is always Christ and his glory. The purpose of the trying time we're in, whatever, if it's, or the lonely or the seemingly void time that we're in. And if we could only see, what would come out of it, what God will do and will produce, then it would just, we wouldn't get discouraged going through those times. Another aspect too about vineyards in winter, I was looking up what happens to vineyards and to vines in the winter season, and there was a website I came across that talked thoroughly about it, and it's just quoting part of it here. It says, "Winter pares a vineyard down to its bones. Vines drop their leaves, revealing spindly arms and crusted trunks. To the untrained eye, it might look bleak. Yet important processes take place, like bud and root growth, pruning, suppression of pests and disease, and more." And then they quote novelist Paul Thoreau saying, "Winter is a season of recovery and preparation."
Yeah.
And it is. So after the harvest time in a vineyard, the vines start to mature, and then next year's buds harden, and the root systems expand so that they can receive more nutrients. And then dormancy happens at the end of the cycle. They stay dormant, and there are two different stages of dormancy here, which I learned about. One is eco-dormancy, which happens when the days shorten, it gets really, really cold, and then that's a time of deep rest. And then the other is endodormancy, which is like the vine's version of a REM sleep. So a REM sleep. When we're in REM sleep is like when we're coming out of our, it's near the lighter sleep, yeah. And yes, and it says this period of rest is vital to the recovery of the vines. And then another process that happens is pruning. Pruning, especially to prevent the spread of, yeah, that doesn't feel good. And prevent the spread of diseases in the trunk of the vine. So spreading elsewhere. And I was just, so really neat examples here that we can take. But I was thinking, too, of just the winter season and the dormancy that happens. And I was thinking about Joanne, who's, who has been tried this year and gone through, from my perspective, an unimaginable pain. And
She wrote today. She was sorry she couldn't. She's still not.
Oh yes, I figured as much. Yeah. So, I know that she gained some healing emotionally, and then had a little bit of normalcy back to her life, and then someone, someone like her who's very active, who's working in an active job, and now is in a way forced to just be stuck, be still for a little bit, and sit out of things. And so what's amazing, what seems to be from her and from her emails, is that she's choosing a really positive perspective, and also thinking in a hopeful perspective. And she mentioned about her, her daughters and being able to be with them, and how she's grateful for the help that she's giving. And I'm just, I'm just thankful for her that she has always had that good attitude. Yeah, it's really inspiring. But so, and I think we've all had seasons like this too. Where our winter seasons. I think I mentioned this in a previous message before too, but just last year in January was when I postpartum with Leland, and it was the closest that I've ever really come to feeling depressed. And it was very, just like dark cloud covering on a daily basis. But, and I was thinking too about that season in the perspective of looking back, like now he's just toddling, and it's just nonstop and crazy, wild. And I was joking to myself, this is not true, because I don't want to say the word stressed, because God does not want us to be stressed. He doesn't want me to be stressed, but I would joke to myself, I say, I'd rather be stressed than depressed. Because, because it was just that, I don't want to go back to that place, but no, God doesn't give us the spirit of being stressed either. So, but it just gives perspective about the seasons that we're in, and thankful to be out of winters sometimes. Another example we have of winter and what God can do and the beauty that he can make out of a winter season is the amaryllis flower. If you know what an amaryllis is, it's a
Bulbs on
they're most of them are in bulbs and potted.
that you see.
Yep. Yes, but they're a beautiful flower that blooms in winter. And I don't know if you can quite see it, but in the background, the window in the background, if you were to look outside of it, you'd see snow. So it's just kind of a cool picture. Is that when so much else is looking cold and dead, despite the conditions, here this flower shows forth its glorious and bright life and color. And that is Christ to us. When he came to this earth, when he was born, and the time that he was born in. And so this is what he did for us, and it's also what he does now within us with his Spirit, is creating life in times when everything else seems dark and cold. He can make us shine bright for him. So that's another cool picture of his faithfulness. There is a possibility for us at any point to go through a winter of our soul. And if we think about how the world would go through a recovery process, mentioned above, like for the vines recovering, they might think of detoxing, maybe doing a cleanse. There's lots of ways and examples to work on ourselves. So this, maybe they might find a place of community through a winter of their soul. Look for help that way. But there's lots of ways that the world might try to seek restoration for their soul, but without God in the picture, without our vine dresser, without the soil being fed, without God's honestly miraculous hand on our life, there is going to be no restoration. We will remain empty, and we are dead. And I was listening to a message on YouTube. This is from Ashland Church of Christ in Ohio, and the pastor was talking about the winters of life. And he was walking through a patch of woods that had, all the leaves. This was in the end of January, and all the leaves were stripped from the trees, or just dead leaves and patches of snow on the ground. And he was saying, demonstrating that you can see all the way through the trees in the winter. You can see all the way through to the end of the woods, and you can see the hollowness, and you can also see everything that's on the ground floor. It's all exposed. So it's so without the lush green leaves, just everything's there. So, and in our backyard, we live behind a little patch of woods that leads to a park. And I should have brought pictures of that, because it's really an interesting, stark difference to see it in the spring and the summer, and then in the end of fall and winter. And you could just see all the dead leaves that we put in from the year before are there, and you can see all the branches that have fallen down or that we throw back there all the time, or dead trees that are there. You can see it all, and you can also see if there's deer hanging out there. You can see them much more clearly at that time of year. But in the summer and the spring, the yard looks cleaner and fuller, and I could be walking down the path in the woods that leads to the park. I could be walking and maybe reaching the very end of the park, but it might perceive that there's still a lot more greenery, a lot more lushness, a lot more woods to go, but it's going to end pretty soon, so it can seem vaster than it is. The dead trees are still there in the spring and summer, but we just, can't see them. So in those seasons of winter, sometimes it's God exposing things that need to have new life and either refreshment or maybe need to be cut off completely, like the pruning. There are even things, sins that are done in secret that God wants to open up. In Luke 12:2, this is the warning against the leaven and what you do in secret being revealed. But it says, "For there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, neither hid that shall not be known." So everything, God wants to pull back the leaves and show what's really there and what needs to be restored in us. And God is the restorer of our souls, as we referenced in Psalm 23 too. And then another verse that I wanted to share is Matthew 11:28 through 30. This is, okay, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in spirit, and you will find rest for your souls." So that's the purpose. When God takes us through these winter seasons that are hard, to be bare before Him, but God really, the desire of His heart is for us to be restored and for our souls to be to find rest. So if we find a dead tree in the woods, that it's impossible for us to bring that back to life in the natural. But God still can. If we're a dead tree, God still can restore us. So that's the difference for Him too, and that emphasizes to us as believers that we know we cannot restore any part of ourselves on our own. And we definitely cannot grant ourselves, the gift of everlasting life that He gives. And there's, there can be idolatry sometimes involved in working on helping ourselves that we see in the world. In Jeremiah 10, this is the passage about idolatry, but it's about, Jeremiah 10, 2 through 6. And this will tell us that if we take a tree out of the woods, if we cut it down, bring it into our house, make it all pretty, it will still be dead. It still does nothing for us. It says, "For the customs of the people are vain. One cutteth the tree out of the forest, the work of the hands of the workmen with the axe. They deck it with silver and gold, they fasten it with nails and with hammers, that it move not. They are upright as the palm tree, but speak not. They must needs be born, because they cannot go. Be not afraid of them, for they cannot do evil, neither also is it in them to do good. For as much as there is none like unto thee, Lord, thou art great, and thy name is great in might." So there is nothing that this tree can do for you, good or bad. And in the same way, when we receive or try to receive help or restore a part of ourselves that's broken with ourselves, or any other idol, any other thing that we're looking for, putting up before God, it will do nothing for us. It will leave us empty, even if it looks pretty for a time, and even if it looks to be standing up straight for a time. So when we go through the winter of our soul with God as our guide, He is exposing in order to bring fullness and make us whole again. Let me share from Psalm 51, 6 through 7. I was thinking of David's heart here too. He says, "Behold, thou desirest truth in the inward parts. In the hidden part thou shalt make me to know wisdom. Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow." So that's the heart that we should have too when we're, what we want God to work in us when we're going through something.
I just wanted to speak more about that analogy of the dead tree, and God can bring that to life. And I do believe that is true, that God can do a miraculous healing and restoration. I think that sometimes it looks more like He cuts down the dead tree and hauls it away and plants a whole new tree.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Because I think a lot of times, and even like with a sin, it's not like, oh, maybe I've been doing this thing with wrongful or sinful motivations, but now God can help make this work with better motivations. Maybe he can do that. Maybe he's calling you to a whole other area of ministry or area of working in him to plant a new seed. So the main thing is to listen to God's voice and what he's calling us to do. And maybe he's calling us to a miraculous restoration. Maybe he's calling us to tear out something that's old, that's going to be painful, that we have to grieve. But whatever it is, we have to listen to his voice, whether we expect it or not.
Amen. Yeah, so he definitely can choose to uproot us out of the ground and make a new tree. I like that picture too.
I was thinking that your message is renewing our hope that God is doing something in us when sometimes we don't feel like it. And, we keep praying for faith, deeper level of faith, deeper ability to trust him. But Hebrews says, faith is the substance of things hoped for. So if we lack hope in our life, if we don't see a purpose, if we don't trust that God's doing something, it's hard for us to have faith. So it's not just hope, it's not just faith, but those two working together are the confidence that God is going to do what he's going to do.
Yes, that's so funny. That message was at the end or closing or that verse was at the closing of my message. But I just love that. Was that evidence of things not seen. So if you are in a winter season, you can't see what's happening in the soil, you can't see what's happening beneath the surface, and the amazing work that God is doing, we know that it's coming, which is that hope, that expectant hope, but we can't even begin to know the amazing work that's taking place beneath the surface. Go ahead, Rosemary.
There are those that the Bible speaks of who are dead, and that's it. And it's in Jude. And it talks about spots, Jude 12, spots in your feast of charities, when they feast with you, feeding themselves without fear. Clouds they are without water, carried about of winds, trees whose fruit withereth without fruit, twice dead, plucked up by the roots. And at the end of 13 it says these people are reserved for the blackness of darkness forever. And I'm just saying that we need discernment. Because there's some people that are just flat out dead. Other people appear to have lost all hope and faith. And God knows whether or not there's still the possibility of life. But by the time you're dead and plucked up by the roots, there's not. So we need discernment when we minister to people, or even to go in a person's direction as to who it is that we're trying to hold out hope for. We need to, like Kenneth Hagin one time was, I've shared this so many times, but it kind of shocked me, was praying for this pastor's wife who had divorced her husband because she had a gift of singing or something, and she thought if she went out in the world she'd become somebody, and her husband was holding her back. And Kenneth was praying for this woman over and over and over, and God said, stop it. She's done. She has gone beyond, it's done. She turned her back on God. She's one of these dead, no fruit, plucked up by the roots. And I say that to say, when we work out our own salvation with fear and trembling, there's that fight to keep pressing in, to keep refreshed, to keep the word. And I've been through a few winters, literally depressed, literally years ago. And it's like, boy, you just keep waiting for it to lift. You probably have gone through that. You just keep waiting for it to lift, and you don't give up. So we need discernment of the people in the middle of waiting, in the middle of a winter, to go to and minister to, and we need discernment like God gave Kenneth Hagin of, put your energy on somebody else. She's done. She has walked away.
And I believe Hebrews passage that mentions in a similar way those who have known of God and turned away, that are not or that are without, saving.
without oil.
Yeah.
They're
No.
done.
Yeah, they're done.
That ought to put the fear of God in us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Amen.
That we fight.
Amen. So and continuing on the vein too of idolatry and the confirmation for us of God being the creator of all things, and of nature and the maker of the seasons. I think that there's a passage in Acts, I think that Dylan did an open pulpit recently on this story, but it's Paul and Barnabas healing the man from Lystra, who Paul said he has faith
Yeah.
to be healed and stand up and be healed. This is Acts, 14, verses 15 through 17. And the people around them, after they did this miracle happen, they were calling them the names of Greek gods, and Jupiter and Mercurius. And Paul and Barnabas were just so upset by this, they rent their clothes. And they said in verse 15, "Sirs, why do you do these things? We also are men of like passions with you, and preach unto you that you should turn from these vanities unto the living God, which made heaven and earth and the sea and all things that are therein, who in times past suffered all nations to walk their own ways. Nevertheless, he left them not without witness, in that he did good. He gave us rain from heaven and fruitful seasons, filling our hearts with food and gladness." So I just like that they're referencing back to God as the creator and the giver of all good things, as speaking of the nature, while they give glory to him as being the one who did this miracle and did this healing. He's the one who gives those fruitful seasons. So God's the one who created the seasons. He's the one who helps us grow through each season. We cannot help ourselves or better ourselves without him. Or like this scenario, we can't receive healing that we need apart from him. So, and then as previously mentioned, the purpose of every kind of healing and restoration is to bring glory and honor to God's name and for the people to know God. So I was looking up winter in the Bible. This passage is about winter. There's a lot that I did not get to in my study. Lots of things revolving lions. I don't know. I have to do more study, but so maybe I'll do a part 2 of winter. But there is in Psalm 147, verses 16 through 17, this is referring to a time in Job where God references to Job the storehouses of snow and hail that he has for times of battle. Because this was after Job asked God, "Why are you doing these things?" And basically God is saying, I am all powerful, I will avenge, and I will protect my people when it comes down to it. So I'm sorry, I don't have the verse here. Psalm 147, thank you. "He giveth snow like the wool, he scattereth the hoarfrost like ashes, he casteth forth his ice like morsels. Who can stand before his cold? He sendeth out his word, and he melteth them. He causeth his wind to blow, and the waters flow." So in it, there you go, yeah. Yeah, so just in contrast with the other things about winter, God has already demonstrated how much power he has and can use even winter storms in that way. So cool, pictures and metaphors. But the last winter metaphor I had was about faith and what Cliff mentioned. Hebrews 11:1. God is always doing a work that we cannot see. So my encouragement to you is that if you are going through a wintry season right now, to take heart and prepare your heart for whatever work God is doing in you, whatever processes are happening. God sees you, he's with you, and he's protecting you, and he's working on bringing forth something great and sweet out of you. So, does anybody else have any? Okay.
That wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up on wings as eagles. They shall run, not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Teach me, Lord, to wait. They that wait upon the Lord shall renew